Anyway, the floor is now open for the Q&A session. I will invite questions. I request that you keep it short. I'd also request that you identify yourself as you ask the question. Yes, sir.
I'm Surya from ISAS. So how do you manage to have good and excellent relations with China by selling relatively inferior weapons to China compared to what you sell to India? And secondly, how did Russia befriend China after all that had happened earlier?
Okay, while you answer that, you might all think up other questions, because then we'll take in twos and threes, but you might wish to answer Mr. Suryanarayan.
Well, I mentioned this about it's not inferior, it's custom-made. One weapon is custom-made for China, another weapon is custom-made for India. I'm not saying that it's very inferior, but you know that from the point of security, the country which is your neighbor and the biggest neighbor has to be approached in one way. And the country which is not your immediate neighbor can be approached in a different way. Yes, and with China, well, frankly, it's very, very, well, someday probably somebody will write a book about our military cooperation with China, because, that was an epic story. Because it started even when we haven't normalized fully our relationship, because the Chinese, they were desperately needing, especially warplanes, yes. And I was in Beijing at that time when we had a Russian squadron of Sukhoi planes, which went to Southeast Asia for demonstration flights, and the Chinese asked us to make a stopover in Beijing, just to have a look. And they had a look, and it was 1990. We still were in a very, I'd say, strange relationship with China. It was not full normalization, it was not full friendship, it was not full animosity. So it was somewhere in between. But they wanted desperately, because after the Tiananmen, they were cut off from all sophisticated Western weaponry, so they wanted to have a look. I was in Beijing, and it was a airfield near Beijing, not inside. So we had this squadron of Russian planes there, and all the Chinese Politburo was there, but of course hidden behind the glass, yes, and watching how these planes operate, yes. And after that, they made the decision to buy these planes, and we sold several hundreds of these planes to them, and they're now producing them. That was a desperate decision also from us, because at that time, our military industry was practically collapsing. And so these several hundred planes ordered from China saved to a certain extent, saved our industry. Yeah. So it was a absolutely very pragmatic decision, both from the Chinese and from the Russians. Well, with friendship with China, well, I believe that now, well, we had a very close friendship in the 50s, beginning of the 50s, after the Chinese Revolution. Because at that time we were just kissing each other and embracing, and so singing Moscow and Beijing forever, yes, and so friendship forever. So. But that was an ideological friendship, mostly. Because most countries were communist. And after at the beginning of the 90s, when we mended our relations, and of course, when we signed agreement on the borderline, that was 30 years. 30 years negotiation. So we practically found ourselves in a new world with no ideological bias, no ideological motivated relationship, but we were absolutely needing each other, because both China, well, frankly speaking, couldn't survive without the backing or safe background in Russia, and Russia couldn't survive without good relations with China. So now we Well, some Western observers call it marriage of convenience, and I always agree because it's rightly the right phrase, yeah, because it's marriage, but of course convenience.
Okay.
A related question on this. There are reports that the Chinese have mostly taken your military equipments and then reverse engineering. They have got the technology, even in the areas where you did not want to part with it, which eventually has affected you financially and otherwise. Because once they start knowing it, would you kindly say whether this is a right allegation or it is just a newspaper?
Well, I'd say it started in the first period of our relations, even in the 50s, when we sold, we started to produce in China our Kalashnikov rifles. The Chinese copied them, and now the Kalashnikov rifles, Chinese production, are also sold everywhere. Yes.
It's better than Russian.
No, inferior. they are much cheaper. Well, but that was our fault, because when we signed agreements, we had to provide this intellectual property, of course, so we didn't provide. When we started to cooperate again, because after that there was 30 years of no cooperation, military cooperation. When we started to cooperate again, well, we were in desperate position at that time, and we, of course, didn't bother about signing any, protection agreement. And of course, now China produces engines for jet fires, their jet fires, which are practically based on Russian technology. But we've moved further now, so I believe that our planes are now still better than the Chinese ones. Yes. So it's now the competition of the industries, yes, competition of the brains, yes. So when we started to insist on intellectual property clauses in our agreements, cooperation started to decrease. So now India is #1. China is now has tremendously big and important military industry itself. So that's a natural. For us, it's more important now to develop our own things, in which we are stronger and in which we have now the capacity to develop. Same with space technology, by the way. At that time, our space industry was always also at a desperate state. And we sold many things to China at that time. And so if you look at their capsules, it's very similar.
Okay.
But that was inevitable.
Thank you, Professor Mooney. Thank you, Ambassador. Now we'll go to Mr. Nitin Doshi, and thank you, sir.
Thank you, Ambassador, for a very vivid.
If you'll identify yourself with the
My name
Ambassador.
is Nitin Doshi. I'm the Honorary Consul for the Comoros, and we have met occasionally. I'll just stay with the topic. On the cultural side, since so many Russians are traveling into the Indian Ocean to Sri Lanka, I would request you to also help promote tourism to Comoros, which is further in the Indian Ocean, further south. On the economic side, the very, very low trade volumes between Russia and India are a cause of great concern for traders such as I have been for the last 40 years. Of course, during the Soviet era, there was a thriving rupee-ruble trade. And it had a lot of uses, it has some abuses. With the West, particularly the economic global crisis, where I feel a form of rupee-ruble revival of trade would be in place and would be very useful, just like China is promoting its currency to go global. And India is very far from making the Indian rupee global, but there is scope, and I hope that would help increase the bilateral trade between Russia and India. I was once upon a time involved in supplies to Russia of various commodities, which has more or less died down after the rupee trade collapse. So perhaps you could throw some more light on how one would revive the India-Russia bilateral trade.
Okay, might take this up then. Because yours will be distinctly different, or?
I will be distinctly different.
Okay, well, that was for many years, I mean, the swaps of Indian rupees, Russian rubles, and so on. But as far as I understand, that was not very convenient for traders, especially when we switched to capitalist system of Africa. Well, at least our foreign trade people didn't like the idea. With China, again speaking about China, with China we gradually revived or established for the first time the system of swaps, yes, because we now, some of our banks keep Chinese yuans, renminbi, and some of Chinese banks. But this, with China it's easier. I can tell you very frankly. With China it's easier because we have very big border trade with China. And some of our Far Eastern regions, China for them, the Chinese regions which border there, are more important, for example, than, for example, Japan or South Korea and so on. That's why they prefer to trade with these currencies. With India, probably it's a little bit more difficult now, but who knows? Well, now we have also bright ideas. Our Prime Minister wants to establish a world financial center in Moscow, so probably we'll have many new developments, yes, in finances, yes. At least we must be more flexible, what I understand.
My name is Tang Li. I'm only a blogger. Okay, two separate questions. One, you mentioned that during the Cold War, India became your ally while the Americans pumped money into Pakistan to deal with the conflict in Afghanistan. Well, now that the conflict in the Soviet Union has withdrawn from Afghanistan, the Americans went in, and now they're having problems with Pakistan. Do you see that the Russian Federation will one day try and bring Pakistan into its camp to replace Pakistan's decreasing relationship with the US? That's one question. Then the second thing is, you've mentioned that in both your trade with with China and India, oil plays a very big factor, and we all know that maybe the biggest rivalry of the next century will be India and China versus competing for global energy. And of course, Russia being a big player in the energy field. Do you think this will be something that Russia will maximize to get the most out of India and China?
Well, about Pakistan, what I see, of course, we cannot substitute the United States there because we cannot afford to waste so much money as absolutely without any return. Well, and what is also interesting about Pakistan, we are looking for opportunities to establish relationship with this country. And for example, we have invented even some new formats with Pakistan. Within the SCO, Shanghai Cooperation Organization, which Pakistan is observer, and Pakistani presidents come to every summit of SCO, and there are always, at the request of Pakistani side, there are always bilateral meetings between the Russian president and the Pakistani president, or the Russian prime minister and the Pakistani prime minister. We also, when we started to think about the future of Afghanistan, and we understood that Pakistan, of course, is a very important major player, we also established, it's not working well, but still it's already there, a four-country format, also on the sideline of Shanghai Cooperation Organization. it's upon our initiative, we have regular meetings of presidents of Afghanistan, Pakistan, Tajikistan, and Russia. And we discuss practically only Afghanistan problem. It's not, of course, a very successful format so far, but it's still probably it's the beginning of a dialogue. And as far as India and China is concerned about this rivalry and so, well, and by the way, one of, again, I'm still in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. One of the projects we wanted to discuss within this format was pipelines from Central Asia, Uzbekistan, for example, member of Shanghai Cooperation, pipelines to Pakistan and India. The problem is they must go via Afghanistan.
And Pakistan.
And Pakistan, yes. This is the big problem. And of course, the projects are obvious because this is the closest way of bringing gas, especially gas, natural gas, to Pakistan and India. But the problem is in the relationship between these two countries. And China and India, well, we want probably to achieve impossible goal, yes, to be on good terms with the two countries, yes, but not bringing one against another. Well, I believe that India and Pakistan, India and China, they will someday probably find some sort of mutual trust and cooperation. By the way, after these 30 years of negotiations, when we, for the first time on the Asian continent, established a system with China, between Russia and China, a system of confidence-building measures in military field along the border. That was, well, we had two channels of negotiations simultaneous. One was on the borderline, about the borderline, and the second one about confidence building in military sphere, because we clashed with Chinese on the border, yes, so we had to establish some sort of confidence. So we established this system for the first time in Asian history along the whole border between Russia and China. 100 kilometers on the Russian side, 100 kilometers on the Chinese side. So we regularly exchange data about what military personnel is within this 100 kilometer zone, what tanks and other artillery are within the zone. So after that, China and India on their border tried to establish same sort of confidence building. Well, they agreed on certain, very limited confidence building, but not the scope which existed between, and still exists between Russia and China. So probably this would be attractive example. After that, I was invited to South Korea because they wanted also to have this experiment with North Korea, but it didn't work at all.
100 kilometers would include all the major cities.
No. In Siberia, no. In Korea, yes. Seoul, yes.
Mr. Jumabai, then you, miss.
This is not so much related to South Asia, but the north of Russia and the Arctic region being open to liner traffic from Europe to China and east.
Not only to China.
Not only to China.
South Korea, Japan, yes.
And Japan. This would drastically change the economic picture in Europe and the East. What are the, plus the oil that you just mentioned, which is there in
Yes, there.
Russia. Do you think that this, A, is a possibility, which looks so, 2, its effect on the world climate?
with all these Arctic developments in the Arctic, of course, it's tremendously difficult picture to assess. Well, by the way, Russia now, because of these climate changes and the warming up in the Arctic, loses every year several square kilometers of its territory, because it's sowing up, yes, the Arctic, yes, borderline is sowing and going into the sea. So we are suffering from this climate change already. Well, with this Arctic route, I think that it's not a very, very near future, because it will need tremendous investment. Because during these, after the Soviet Union ceased to exist, we practically dismantled all the navigation stations needed for safe navigation along this route. So we now have to establish, but different one, probably unmanned, automatic. And that's why we are now discussing with Singapore, probably for Singapore there is a big field of cooperation, yes, of course, in this field. So I don't believe that it will be in 5 years from now, or even 10 years from now, probably a little bit further. But that would be, I think, already different globe and absolutely different climate. So,
but does Russia benefit to a certain extent from climate change in the Arctic, in the sense that as it grows warmer here, agriculture in northern Russia benefits? Is that a fact?
well, frankly speaking, it's also a big headache for us, because we can't understand how it would influence us. Of course, since the biggest part of Russia, the whole of Russia, yes, is in permafrost. And you know what permafrost means? In Singapore, it's very difficult. Well, it means, yes, it means that the surface of Earth is practically frozen all the year round, not only in winter time, but in summertime. It goes to 2 or 3 meters deep in the earth, so the ice there doesn't melt even in summer. In summer they have temperatures about 30 degrees Celsius, yes, above. But it melts on the surface, and underneath it's still ice, frozen ice. So I've been to Yakutia, which is the biggest, our republic, which is practically the whole country, 3 million square kilometers, the size of India, one republic, yes. And this size of India republic, called Yakutia in Russia, is the whole this country is in permafrost. So when they build roads, when they build 2 or 3 stories, even buildings, the problem is that in summertime they collapse, and in winter they So we invented special techniques, special technology for construction of buildings, or even under surface passages, yes, in these climate conditions. So we have several scientific research institutes working on this problem. Now, in 10 or 15 years from now, we'll have no permafrost there. So we'll have to build it once again, yes. Everything, railroads, airfields, buildings, everything, because they will be absolutely, so it's enormously economical difficult. But on the other side, we'll have a lot of newly cultivated land, because we can grow pineapples there probably someday.
Yes, miss. You wanted to ask a question? Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
You wanted?
I did.
Yeah.
I'm from India. My name is Gautam Rai, and I'm a scholar here. You very nicely pointed out on all the road that have been there between Russia and India, and it's very encouraging. And I mean, coming from a generation who grew up reading Misha, that's something which is I have fond memories of. If there are any gray areas that you think where we need to worry about in terms of things not going proper between Russia and India, what is that missing link, if you may?
Well, I'd like to put it very mildly and very diplomatically. Well, the problem is that India is now, since it's emerging world power, and probably it will be one of the two most important powers in the world, yes, at least in Asia, yes, and probably in the future, not only in Asia. And since India is one of the big, fastest developing economies in the world, of course there is a, well, I'll be very diplomatic, there is a sort of competition, yes, political competition for India. Well, what we feel is that, of course, take for example nuclear energy, yes, this power station. Yes, we started to build it when nobody was there, and nobody wanted to build these things in India. Now we have another power which is offering much better, probably, things, and which, as we feel, is against further relationships in this field with Russia. So of course we feel a little bit offended, mildly speaking. Yes. So I understand that since India is becoming more and more important and more powerful, and India is of course now a very tremendously interesting phenomenon in world politics. Of course for us is, well, like everybody else, we feel that we are losing the market on which we have already established. So we don't like it, yes, you know, yes. But that means that we should work harder, and we should be more flexible, we should be more intellectually probably, or scientifically more advanced, yes. What we are proud now of, that we have the better, well, after Chernobyl, we have the best nuclear powers in the world now, much better than the Americans have. But at the same time, there are lots of problems, as you know, with our cooperation. We are not as punctual, yes, so to say, as Western companies and so on. So there are things which we have to amend, yes, in order to be still competitive. So the basic competitiveness is there, but the other things, yes, we have to. I always say that it's good that people criticize us, but we must accept this criticism, yes. Usually in the Soviet period, we didn't like when people criticize us.
This voice?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Chairman. Your Excellency, I've got two propositions. Of course, it's going to be a migration from the term of reference. We covered too much of politics, I guess, so that politics is not on the screen. So my question here on the political front, with regard to Afghanistan and thereafter, and the connection to Chechnya, of course, that is inconvenient too. The question is that what would be the implication when the American withdraw from Afghanistan? Will there be revival within the Taliban and with that of Chechnya? I happened to be incidentally in yesterday World Forums on, financial. I met about 6, 7 Chechnya, and they were saying what is ongoing now in Russia in regard to Chechnya. Is there blueprints that you would like to grant them autonomy or whatever not? Is there a future for them to live in their own world that they wish to be, though aligned with Russia? Is there blueprints that you think from your angle that you know of in regard to Chechnya? On the economic front, because I have in the 60s, 70s engagement with Moscow Narodny Bank, Russian shipping and things like that. And now you have the Russian Silicon Valley. Is there any alignment with that, with India, in the blueprint that you think that is foreseeable between India and Russia on the technology front?
Well, the first question, I would be also very with Chechnya. Of course, there is a big problem after the American withdrawal, because the worst scenario would be that Taliban would again come to power there. And that's why we are trying to cooperate now the former Soviet republics in Central Asia to establish some sort of impregnable border, yeah, so to say, for this. But it's impossible to keep these people away, yes. With Chechnya, very friendly. I would say, for being a Russian and having watched all these developments, I can tell you that Chechnya is now as autonomous as possible. Yes, practically they have their own government, their own finances, which are much bigger than the rest republics in Russia. Well, you know that Muslim republics in Russia enjoy much better treatment now than all other for natural reasons. We must guarantee them much better life than anybody else. If we guarantee them better life within the Russian Federation, that would mean that they will not look at Taliban, yes, because they will be much better off than anybody would ever offer them. So they have, well, the best autonomy as anybody would wish to. Yes. So, well, of course, it's very difficult to say whether this blueprint, as you call it, will work after, for example, their President Kadyrov goes away, yes. But he's still young and very ambitious, so probably he'll stay for some more years, yes. And part of our economic strategy is to bring investment into this region. You know how difficult it is. This region, which was for a decade, more than a decade, and practically semi-war state, how to attract investment there. But Singapore is already working there. Four airports in the North Caucasus, it's not Chechnya, but very close. 4 airports are now under renovation with participation of Singapore. So, well, I still can't believe in that yet, but Singapore is, in this respect, is very, very...
Well, they have to make a living.
Okay, any further questions? Yeah, yes, yes.
I understand that your foreign trade people may not want to revive rupee rumors. This is quite clear, and we know the reasons of the past. What I had in mind was not so. It was more in the capitalistic way of doing it, of currency swaps.
Yes.
Of, for example, Russia accepting a rupee LC for import of oil. Russia and India accepting ruble LCs for import of products from India. This would perhaps further our trade much better. It doesn't have to be a barter kind of arrangement which rupee ruble entail. This would be just a supplement to just being focused either. Why do we need to trade, in other words, in US dollars or euro? We can trade in our currencies.
I can give a very personal answer to that. Well, my personal opinion that our trade people are very lazy. Yes, very lazy. They prefer to work in the easiest countries for them. The easiest countries for them is Europe. Well, with Europe, everybody wants to trade, yes. With countries where you need to know foreign language, where you know have to learn foreign culture, and of course India is very special culturally, yes. So when our people will feel that this is a very, very promising market, they will rush into it. Well, same, well, again China. With China it was absolutely, we started from zero. Nobody from our country wanted to work in China. We started from swaps, yes, direct swaps of, not of renminbi, but yes. The first deal in the Far East with China after we established it was a swap of one barge, a big boat of watermelons from China for 2 heavy-duty trucks from Russia. That was the beginning of the Russian-Chinese trade. It was 1919.
But this kind of barter trade, I mean,
But
initially,
yes.
71, we also engaged in the barter trade with the Soviet Union then. It was very tricky. For instance, I mean, if you entered into a, say, $10 million trade, or rubles or whatever, what would happen is that because when you deal with a less developed partner, like an African partner, you are able to lift, but that other partner is not so much able to lift the counterpart goods from Russia. And usually barter trades have a 2-3% swing limit.
Yeah.
So what happens is technically, the weaker partner creates credit for the superior partner in barter trade. So we ended up actually creating credit for Russia, for Soviet Union, Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia, first 2-3 years, because we didn't quite understand the tricks of the trade, so to say, and we lost out. Not that we had any other options, because a war-battered country like Bangladesh had to go in for a barter trade, but it had to be technically very well managed. Like determining price of melons and the crops and all that, it's not easy.
That is the history with India also. The rupee balances in Russia and the ruble balances in India and the Reserve Bank have never been resolved because of disagreement on exchange rates. But that is history. One can look at trade and starting new way of trading. And what the ambassador said begs one very simple question then. Is Russia Asia or is it Europe?
Yes, the biggest problem for us. Well, I will be very frank, judging from what I feel in Moscow, for example. Moscow, of course, is a Europe, yes. And all people in Moscow, 99% of our political and business elite, they look into Europe. Not the United States, but Europe. But if you move to Siberia, they are 100% Asians. They are not interested in Europe at all. For them it's China, Japan, South Korea, and probably in future India.
Yeah. Peter the Great's Russia was Europe. Okay, Ambassador, thank you very much. Let us give him a I think you covered the subject very well. It was not an easy subject to tackle. Russia and South Asia, 6 centuries of successful, diplomatically, successful cultural and economic exchanges, but I think we've done very well. You were very refreshingly honest with your views, both personal and official, and I think on assessment we got more than we had actually bargained for. So as a token of our appreciation for that contribution, we will let you carry this weight with you. We hope it's an intellectual weight, this volume that on our behalf, you take it home, and this is our in remembrance of the event. And could I invite you, Ambassador, and all of you, whom we also thank for participation, to a tea reception with the Ambassador below.
Thank you to the chair.